Welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, let's make your product available. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I appreciate you joining me today. Hey, I wanted to switch gears a little bit from our standard, and we're going to talk a little bit tiny more about sales in general. Well, sales in general, but a concept having to do with sales. And that is making your product available. Now, at the surface, you're going to be like, well, of course, that's the whole point of selling stuff, is that your product has to be available for people to buy. But what we see a lot in businesses, especially small businesses that are just starting, getting their legs under them and they're getting some momentum and things of that nature, is that they keep trying to find people to sell to. And what do I mean by that? Because again, at the surface, you're like, well, duh, you need to find people to sell to. And on one hand, that's true. There need to be people there to sell to offer your product to, and make it available. But what you need to really be doing is making your product available and known to the people that are already looking for your product and service. Does that make sense? So really, you have to stop trying to sell or stop trying to find people to sell to and start making yourself more available for those that are already looking for you. Think of this concept of like a billboard. A billboard is not something that is looking specifically for you to sell to. They're not targeting Kale. They're not targeting Susie over here. They're not targeting that. Now they're targeting potentially a demographic in the form of where that billboard is put, in what community, what highway, and the type of traffic that's on there, what state it goes in, all those types of things. Certainly there's psychology that goes into the billboard, but they're not specifically looking to sell you. What they're doing is making it known that their product exists and is available, and gives you the option and the opportunity to go to their website, to go to that store, to look that product up online, or whatever that thing is that billboard is advertising. There is a subtle difference here, and it is an extremely important difference, because if you're not doing the latter and you're only doing the first, if you're only going door to door searching for people to sell to, but you're not doing the things required in order to make your company and your product known to the masses so buyers can find you, then you're missing a massively critical part of the formula for creating a successful business that is dependent on the exchange and the transactions of sales. And if you think about this, is it easier to convince people to buy something, or is it easier to put it in front of them, a consumer that's already looking for that thing, to where they make their own decision to buy? Well, of course, right? If you can put your product in front of, this is the classic example of, would you rather have the best tasting hot dog on the planet, or would you rather have the best location to sell hot dogs to? Like, yeah, if you had a hot dog stand outside of, pick any sports stadium on the planet, whether it be NASCAR or football or baseball or anything, if you had it outside of that stadium as people are getting out and the stadium had run out of food, it doesn't matter how crappy your hot dog is, you can sell them for $20 a pop, because you've got thousands of hungry customers that are walking by your hot dog stand every day. You don't have to sit there and go, do you want a hot dog? Do you want a hot dog? No, by virtue of you being available and people knowing that you exist, they know that there's a hot dog stand at the north entrance of, this stadium. I'm hungry. I'm going to go buy a hot dog. And that's kind of how that works. But there are certainly two aspects of it, right? The direct sales, but then also the more, as with billboards, kind of blanket advertising and making yourself known. Because the reality is, in the North American culture, in our capitalistic society, we are a society of consumers. If you didn't know this, we like to buy stuff, a lot of stuff. But we have to know that you exist. We have to know that your product exists. We have to know how it solves our problem, how it meets our needs, how it elevates our status. You have to know, and in order for people to know that, you have to be known. And this is the reason that we have convenience stores, that there's a 7-Eleven or a Wawa or, whatever local chain, Allsups, whatever local chain is in your community, is because we're not out there specifically looking for a pack of gum or some mints or 5-hour energy drinks or whatever, all the random stuff that's put there at the cashiers. When we stop to get gas, which is a need, and we go in to pay, or at least how we used to do, we're a society of, oh, this is in front of me. Yeah, okay, I would like some gum. Boom, gum. They weren't sitting there going, the cashier wasn't going, hey, here's some gum today. Comes in these amazing flavors, and it's going to help make your breath, more appealing. So when you're talking to those ladies at the office, that blah, 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 they're not doing this whole sales pitch. They're just putting the gum in front of you in the display. So as you're somewhere that you already go, you see it, it creates a desire in you, and boom, you make the transaction. And how much easier is that? Especially for, a price point like the gum. Now, this is certainly different for different price point stuff. If you're selling something that's, massively expensive, yes, there is a sales process that is involved, and it's a little bit more in depth versus just putting a mega yacht in the ocean and somebody walks by and goes, oh yeah, I'll spend the $200 million on that, Although people that can drop $200 million are probably tend to do this as well. They're just the scale of the items that they buy is a little bit larger than a pack of gum. We've seen this a lot, like, hey, I'm going to go down and buy a Rolls Royce. And it's funny, that actually reminds me of a story, and I don't know if I've told it on here or not before, but I used to work at a boat center, a smaller one. It was Olympic Boat Centers up in Northwest Washington, based out of Seattle. They sold bayliners and trophy boats and a couple different things. They are now out of business. They got absolutely murdered by the recession after 9/11 and couldn't survive that. But I'll never forget, I started in the parts department, and then I helped out with the service a little bit. And then during boat shows, I would go and do sales and help out with the boat shows. But I wasn't a salesman per se. But I'll never forget, we had one customer. It was a very wealthy, retired gentleman in our community, drove Porsches around and all that stuff, which was unusual for our community, because our community where I grew up in Northwest Washington was very middle class. We were not high society by any stretch of the imagination. And this one gentleman and his wife, I think his name was Jack, if I remember correctly. Super nice guy, he was probably like 80 years old, but had done very well for himself, whatever he had done through his career. And he had a nice boat and that was down that we had serviced. He kept it down at the marina and everything. It was one of the bigger boats. And I'll never forget his wife coming in one day, and we were having some issues with the engines on the boat, and we couldn't figure it out, and it was taking a long time, and blah 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 blah, right? And his wife comes in one day, and we're chatting, and he's talking with the store manager, and she goes, "Yeah, Jack was getting so frustrated that this boat was taken. We were wanting to take it out this past weekend, but we couldn't because of these engine issues and all this stuff, right?" And she herself is like 70 years old, And she goes, "Jack, you just need to, do something to make yourself feel better. Why don't you just go get a new car?" And he did. He went out and bought a new Porsche. Well, Porsches are stick shifts, and they drive a certain way, and being an 80-year-old man. And so then she started to complain about how poorly he was driving this brand new Porsche. But the point being, right, there was something that he'd wanted. He's a consumer. He had the ability and means to do so, and he went out and bought a new Porsche, just like we would go out and like, oh, hey, there's, some Wrigley gum or some bubble gum, whatever, and we pick that up. But we are a society of consumers. It, again, is the reason why there are fast food joints. We want things readily available, made to us, so that we can consume them immediately as that need comes up. We don't necessarily sit at home and go, I'm going to go out and find McDonald's right now because, man, that McDonald's hamburger is just so delicious that I have to consume one right now. Absolutely not. What we do is, because there is a McDonald's on every other street corner, and even more depending on what city you live in and how densely populated it is, when you're driving along, your stomach goes growl, 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 and you look up and, hey, there's the Golden Arches. Boom, it's convenient, and I go do it. They've made it available to us. They're not selling you a hamburger. They're selling you that convenience. They're selling you that being known and that quick experience. Now, once you get inside, yes, they try to upsell you to, your larger sizes and, add fries and all those types of things that we've heard. But if you are not doing this in your business, and I'm not saying not everyone can build franchises on every corner and have, 500 McDonald's franchises in, your downtown area. But there are things that you must do and that you have to do to find where your ideal clients and where your customers are congregating and make yourself known. Put yourself in that position. This may be in the form of an advertisement in a magazine that everyone in your industry reads. or putting out a newsletter in LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups where everyone in your industry goes to, going to conferences and putting a booth out for your industry, going to something totally unrelated, but there are people in your ideal customer bucket that go to those types of things. Maybe the National Final Rodeo, and you do, man, I can't even think of things. You sell tires, you sell fences. Do you think people that go to National Final Rodeos and their big expos have fences? Yeah, absolutely. Put up your big display and help make your product and service known. There's all kinds of things you can do if you take a second to step back and go, okay, where are my ideal clients congregating that I can put my stuff in front of their eyeballs? And not necessarily, like, certainly if you have the opportunity to talk to them and sell, absolutely, but not necessarily for that purpose. More just to, if I could take a giant billboard and put it anywhere to say Kale Houser Enterprises and this product XYZ exists, and put it in front of your ideal clients, and you've got 10,000 of them walking by it every day, what would that look like for you? It may be a billboard, it may be a sign somewhere, but it also may be a presence online. It may be content that you start creating in the form of a podcast or on social media, whatever that is for you in your industry as appropriate. Because certainly, for lawyers is different from HVAC technicians, which is different from restaurateurs, which is different from, rodeos or the cowboy industry. But that's something, as being that business owner and that leader, you can't ignore this aspect of your business if you want it to be successful. Does that make sense? So stop trying to find people to sell to and start making yourself more available and known for those that are already looking to buy something in the realm of your product or service. Okay? All right. So make your product available in the form of, do eyeballs actually see it and know that it exists? Cool. I hope you guys have a fantastic afternoon, no matter where you're at in the world. Bye.